You're watching Cable 2.
Good evening and welcome to the January 28th, 2024 Winston-Salem Forsyth County Board of Education meeting. I am Deanna Kaplan, Board Chair. I appreciate your attendance and I say good evening to our viewers on Cable 2. Please rise as we start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing as you are able for the invocation given by Board Member Susan Miller. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our inspirational quote for tonight is by Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. We will now have a moment of silence in remembrance of a student from Con Oak Elementary School. Thank you.
Thank you. Our first order of business tonight is the agenda review. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as written?
Second.
So I have a motion by Board Member Kuhn, a second by Board Member Crowley. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? I'd also like to make a note that in the print of the agenda that you all received, the very first discussion item on the audit was removed because we do not have the audit yet, but it did not end up in your print. So I just want to let you know about that. So we will not be talking about the audit this time. So our special performance, we would like to recognize Athenia Perez from Reagan High School.
Good evening, everyone. Athenia Perez is a 12th grade flute player or flautist from Reagan High School. She has consistently passed auditions over the years and played with the All-County, All-District, and All-State honor bands. After graduation, Athenia plans to attend Western Carolina University, majoring in music performance. Tonight, she will perform the Flute Concertino in D major by Cecile Chaminade. Please give a warm welcome to Miss Athenia Perez.
And are Athena's parents or family members, if they are present, can they please stand? Next, we have our special recognitions. First, Tina Lupton, the Executive Director of Professional Learning, will recognize Kelly Carr from Reagan High School as the Teaching Fellow Scholarship recipient.
Good evening, Board Chair Kaplan, members of the board, and Superintendent McManus. I am here tonight to recognize Kelly Carr. Kelly is a student at Reagan High School. She is one of our aspiring educators. She is currently taking teaching as a profession, which is in its second year of being offered as a course for educator preparation. She is here today with Mrs. Beverly Cagle, who is our teaching as a profession teacher. We have 3 in the district. We continue to expand this experience for students. Kelly is currently student teaching at Meadowlark Elementary School for her first student teaching experience. She fell in love with elementary and wants to pursue that as a licensure. When she decides which college she wants to go to, she is still deciding. But we are very excited for Kelly in her pursuit of becoming an educator. We wish her the best and can't wait to see her back as a beginning teacher. Kelly, thank you so much.
Next, Deborah Troxwell will recognize the National Board Certified Teachers.
Thank you, Superintendent McManus, the school board, and guests for honoring the newly certified and renewed National Board Certified Teachers. My name is Deborah Troxell. I teach full-time at West Forsyth High School, and I'm the Winston-Salem-Forsyth County Schools National Board District Coordinator. So I do that work in my free time. There is a story of a dad who gives his recent college graduate a car. She takes the car to a used car lot, which offers $100. Then to a pawn shop, which offers $1,000. Then she takes the Nissan Skyline R34 to a car club, which offers $100,000. The point of the story is to find the right place that knows your value. Recently, with the leadership of Heather Barksdale and now Jacqueline Findley, Winston-Salem-South County Schools and the Teacher Academy have taken the initiative to increase support for National Board candidates. In addition to the monthly support sessions, Winston-Salem-South County Schools now offers monthly small group cohort sessions and has launched the Beginner to Board program for Year 3 beginning teachers to begin exploring the concepts of accomplished teaching. I am so grateful to work in a school system that knows the value of experienced, reflective teachers. The teachers here tonight have submitted a portfolio of work in which they analyze their instruction and student work to prove their impact on student learning. Now we will recognize the newly certified and renewed NBCTs in attendance at the meeting tonight. Please come forward when I call your name, and Tina Lupton's going to help me. Thank you. Sarah Moss. She's a 7th grade ELA teacher at the downtown school. Allison Barham, 4th and 5th grade English language arts teacher at the downtown school. Next, we have Jennifer Edgerton, who's a 1st grade teacher at Union Cross Elementary. Ronald Force, the band teacher at Clemens Middle. Valerie Jaffray, at 5th grade ELA teacher in social studies at Meadowlark Elementary. Ellen Harp, third grade at Louisville Elementary. Daniel Henley, eighth grade social studies at Walkertown Middle. Megan Houston, the instructional facilitator at Sedge Garden Elementary. Erica Hunt, English as a second language at Old Richmond and Gibson Elementary. Laura LeMay, seventh grade science at Louisville Middle. Katie Marsh, third grade, Sherwood Forest Elementary. Kristen McKillop, MTSS coordinator at Sedge Garden Elementary. Raina Nelson, social studies and IB personal project at Paisley Magnet. Andrew Oliver, English, Parkland High School. Jessica Perry, first grade, Union Cross. Angie Queen, third grade teacher at Mineral Springs. Lindsay Snyder, English at Reagan High School. And just an additional note, Angie and Lindsay have moved from National Board candidates into National Board facilitators working with small group cohorts now. Christine Sir Jacquemy, school counselor at Sherwood Forest Elementary. Sarah Smith, math at Reagan High School. Miranda Swift, fifth grade at Griffith Elementary and MCL. Stephanie Wallace, English and teacher cadet at East Forsyth, a renewed candidate. Suzanne Wewert at kindergarten at Louisville Elementary. And Suzanne Zapak at seventh grade math and reading inclusion at Thomasville Jefferson Middle School. And, yep, she is, I just missed her. And Amy Fopp, third grade, Sherwood Forest.
Next, Dr. Clinton Wilson, our Chief Officer of Student Services, will give the proclamation of National School Counseling Week.
Good evening. I'm Kenya Rocker. I am the district lead high school counselor in Winston-Salem for Forsyth County Schools, and I'm here with my colleague Felicia Tubbs, and she is the district lead middle school counselor. And it gives us great pleasure to recognize National School Counseling Week, which is next week, February 3rd through 7th. Our 160 school counselors work tirelessly to live up to the 2025 theme for National School Counseling Week, helping students thrive. Our counselors promote academic support. They seek to provide emotional well-being by helping students navigate their feelings, navigate past and present traumas, and by building resilience. Our school counselors seek to enhance life readiness by understanding the strengths and the passions of students and helping them channel those strengths and passions into the 4 E's: employment, enlistment, enrollment, and entrepreneurship. They are caring hearts, beacons of hope, carriers of knowledge about all things school. They are often a part of every team the school has to offer, and at the same time, the first line to mental, physical, and emotional challenges that students face on a daily basis. Wearing many hats is truly an understatement. Please take the time to thank a school counselor next week for being the wind beneath the wings of not just the students they serve, but the staffs, parents, and communities they touch. We have a special honor for 34 of our 160 school counselors that will be given out. And we have 34 counselors who have served our district for 15 years or more. Yes. And one of those counselors, Ms. Tanya Neal, is here tonight, so we'd like to honor her. And we also have some other counselors here from the district. We'd like to recognize Sabrina Bailey from Union Cross Elementary, Ann Spain from Jefferson Elementary, Eugenia Sahir from Hall Woodward Elementary, Tia Bradley from Brunson Elementary, Nicole Britt from Walkertown Elementary, Cam Wingfield from Speece Elementary, and Michelle Hines from Carver High School. And we thank them for being here after their busy day. Thank you so much. And again, please wish all of your counselors a happy National School Counseling Week next week, February 3rd through 7th.
And then we got Lord have mercy, Rick.
Board of Education Appreciation.
Yes, thank you. I'll swear mine too. Thanks.
Those are mentors.
And next, Dr. Clinton Wilson, Chief Officer of Student Services, will recognize National Mentoring Month.
Good evening, everyone. The purpose of mentoring at its core guarantees that young people always have someone around who not only cares about them, but is present to assure them they are not alone in dealing with day-to-day challenges. Research confirms that mentors can have a powerful impact on young people in a variety of personal, academic, professional situations, and contribute to overall feelings of belonging. Ultimately, mentoring helps connect a young person to personal growth and development and social and economic opportunities. Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools is fortunate to have district mentors who work in 6 of our schools to provide support over 160 students. If they would step forward at this time, our 6 district mentors. Step forward. There's 3 of y'all that's here tonight. Step forward. Okay, step back. We should have practiced this, sorry. Our district is also fortunate to have fostered mentoring partnerships with outside entities such as Big Brothers Big Sisters of Winston-Salem, if you would step forward. And also, please stand if you have been assigned a little as well within our district. Thank you, guys. And then Senior Academy from Greater Winston-Salem, Inc., if you would step forward and stand. Board Member Kuhn. These organizations work with our most vulnerable populations to ensure student success. So at this time, please stand to your feet and give them honor, please. Thank you.
Next, Tricia McManus, our superintendent, will recognize the Board of Education Appreciation Month.
Yes, hi, I'm going to do it from here. So just wanted to take a minute to thank our 9 members of our Board of Education for your service. And I'll tell you, those that don't know the behind-the-scenes work, you all have, it's pretty much a full-time job with all you have to read to prepare for our meetings. And again, you have a very tough job. You're making decisions that many times some people like, some people don't, and it's a tough job. But you know what? You guys do it for the right reasons, which is for our students. And so I just appreciate you. All of us appreciate you. Staff appreciates you for taking time to serve in this very important role. I can't think of anything more important than the future of our students and their lives. And so thank you for serving in this role. Each of you have a little token of our appreciation that says thank you for making a difference. It's at your desks. But thank you to the members of our board. Can we please give them a round of applause? Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent McManus. You make our jobs look easy. And next, please enjoy the board spotlight video.
From a dude at 247, which is a big recruiting service for football. And he was like, "We'd love to have you here." It was the first time the Navy sponsored the game. I was super excited. You know, I ran up and told my dad, and he was like, "We got to get you to Texas."
Sacked on the 18-yard line by Garrison Dibble. He will play at Navy. Perfect for the Navy All-American Bowl.
I mean, it was a lot of fun, of course, but it was a little nerve-wracking, you know. About like 25,000 people were there. It's a lot more than an average Atkins game. Yeah, it was night and day between just your average high school game. It was a bunch of like 4 and 5 stars, you know, best kids in the country. I've never been like in front of that many people before, you know, like about 1 million people on TV, so that was crazy. I wouldn't say it was too overwhelming, you know, I just knew I had to get done what I had to get done.
We're seeing the full array of pass rush moves from Garrison Dibble. Led the nation in sacks with 31 during his senior season.
Nah, I wasn't surprised. I mean, I knew I'd play good. It was really, like, good for it because, you know, around here don't play as many kids that are that good, so it's hard to tell where you're at. But when you go against someone that good and do good, it's really nice. It's awesome, you know, just all that hard work finally paying off.
Why Navy for you? I just love what Coach Newberry's doing with the program. It's really good academic reputation.
So, you know, a guy from NBC, he comes up to me right before the game. He's like, "Garrison, we're going to need you at halftime. We'd like to do an interview on air." And I was like, "That's awesome, okay." And so, you know, I was a little nervous for it. They didn't tell me what they were going to ask or anything. But they just pulled me aside at halftime, you know. They're like, "We're live in 3, 2, 1."
After 2 sacks in this game, I don't know if there's anything I can tell you. Keep doing what you're doing. But in all seriousness, Garrison, super proud of you, super proud of where you're committing to. Keep leading and keep excelling. We're all watching, man.
Coach Behringer has been like an amazing, you know, coach. He's been so great to me. I couldn't have done this without him. Yeah. And then, you know, my parents and my brother. Playing with my big brother was awesome. It was
Tell me
really
your
fun.
brother's name.
Joseph. So he played here. He's a couple years older than me. Okay. He played center here, and he really got me into weightlifting and the whole football thing back all the way to my freshman year. The academic reputation was so good at the Naval Academy, and I wanted to play big-time football too, so it all worked out. You know, the goal is obviously the NFL, but you got to set yourself up if that doesn't happen, you know. The odds are that's not going to happen, so statistically. You know, I've been getting some calls from some other coaches now too after I played good, but I mean, you know, I'm just committed. I'm just super excited, you know, to play football and then get some great education. It's a great blend.
Take a look at this strange device that
That was great. Next, we have a public hearing on the naming of the softball scoreboard at Glenn High School after Barbara Stanley Volcano. Is anybody here to speak? Okay. Mr. Walker, do you have any comments you'd like to make?
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, Madam Chair, Board, and Superintendent McManus. Just wanted to introduce tonight that we had a request came in from our athletic department at Glenn High School in support of naming scoreboard after Barbara Stanley Volcano. And this comes also with support of the Booster Club at Glenn High School. And so just to give you just some really quick numbers, she's been very supportive of men's and women's athletics at Glenn High School. Has spent over $90,000 of her own money to support Glenn High School related to school boards for almost every venue there. And so she's been very active at Glenn for over 25 years. And so she is well-known and well-respected in the Glenn community. So I just wanted to introduce that tonight, and then we'll open it up for anyone that wants to speak in favor of. And while Mr. Stanley is going to come up to the podium and speak, I want to recognize him for being inducted into the Glenn High School Hall of Fame this past weekend, and for his service to Glenn High School for over 30 years as our athletic director. So, Marty, thank you for your service to our district, and turn it over to Marty at this time.
Good evening, everyone. Barbara is my sister, and I was the AD at Glenn for about 28 years. And in the 90s, I replaced most of the scoreboards. But after I retired in 2013, I sat out my 6 months. I've gone back and helped Joe McCormick, who took my place as athletic director, and starting when our scoreboards in the gym were 24 years old. They were put up when the high school was opened again in 84, 85. And she made a $6,000 donation to complete that project. Then with the stadium renovations, our play clocks were outdated because high school football went from a 25-second clock to like they do in college with 25-40. She sent me a $5,000 check to replace those. And then they looked really good, but the scoreboard that was over 20 years old looked really bad. She paid for the entire scoreboard and the installation, which was $32,000. She upgraded the sound system, which was $20,000. Our baseball scoreboard was 26 years old, and with her and Chick-fil-A and a couple others, she funded about 70% of it. And as I was driving her back to her car in the golf cart, she looked over at the softball field and she said, "Well, don't we need to fix that one too?" And I kind of thought she was joking. And then about a month later, she called me and she said, "Have you gotten me a price on the softball scoreboard?" And I said, "Well, no, I haven't." And so we proceeded there. That was a $21,000 project that she funded entirely. And both of her sons graduated from Glenn High School, and she asked absolutely nothing in return. And Joe McCormick, who is the athletic director, filled out the application for us to put her name on the softball scoreboard, and I would really appreciate it if you would consider that tonight and approve it. Thank you.
At this time, we will hear public comments on agenda items only. We expect civility. Please be kind, considerate, respectful. Direct your comments only to me as board chair and not to anyone in the audience. No, we cannot talk about sensitive and private student or personnel information in this public setting. Please know that each public comment is heard and there's a follow-up process to address your questions or concerns. You have 3 minutes to speak. If you have more to share, always know you can email us directly. Our first speaker is Jason Lucero.
Age is starting to catch up to us all. Madam Chairwoman, Board, Ms. Tricia McManus, it's been a minute. I want to talk about a couple things that came up, and I want to just make sure we're all on the same page. We should never compromise in allowing competent people to be responsible for our children. I hope we agree on that. Lowering our hiring standards to allow people that failed drug tests is not the answer. It's not the issue we have in our school district. I know all of you remember I went door to door during the last campaign to talk to teachers and parents in our district for months. Something none of you up there did, with the exception of Mr. Barr. He knocked on a lot of doors and sat at a lot of tables and had some very awkward conversations with some of these families with me. I appreciate that. But we got a lot of great information from that. Here are the true reasons we are losing and not gaining teachers in our district. The code of conduct was and continues to be a disaster. Teachers are tired of getting verbally and physically abused, and students not being held accountable.
Mr. Lucero, please stick on topic on the agenda item.
We're getting there. Transportation only gets 1% of the entire budget, and how do we expect to hire, train, and recruit transportation staff without funding them? We are not using the safety tools that we have to protect our children. Every school has a set of metal detectors, and they are never being used. We all paid for them, but we do not support Sheriff Kimbrough and his staff. We're building stadiums, giving huge raises to our staff. We pay an exorbitant amount of money to our leadership of this district, and our performance continues to decline. We cannot find teachers, janitorial staff, food and nutrition staff, or transportation staff, and our children are not safe. And now you want to allow people to fail drug tests just to fill vacancies. I want to remind you in closing, every single day this school year we have heard at least one or more of the following issues. gun incidents, staff watching outside kids coming into our schools and jumping other students, lockdowns, and bus changes because there aren't enough drivers or buses. If we focus on giving our frontline district staff a great work environment, then we will increase our retention and they will tell everyone else to come work with us. But lowering our standards to accept people that failed drug tests is unacceptable. It is almost the most insane thing this board has ever thought of. I want to read a quote from another educator in this district. As a former teacher, this is a slap in the face of all that went through school to qualify to be a teacher. Maybe if there were rules for students, no excuses, and follow-through for those who break them, there would be more people willing to come back to teaching. The true heart of a teacher is not about money, equality, equity, or any of that nonsense. Teachers live to teach and watch children learn. Teachers under the influence of any drug or alcohol should never even be a thought as a teacher. We should never compromise and allow incompetent people to be responsible for our children. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Myra Bumgarner.
Evening, Board. Superintendent McManus. I would like you guys to consider to vote no on the forgiveness of a failed drug test unless you specify the levels at which failure occurs and that they do not align with what could be created by a high-level CBD. You speak of THC being too high, but still contingently welcoming them. Is high a true high? But still, sorry, if it is indeed CBD, the level should be defined, medically accepted THC levels found in CBD. Forsyth County Public School System is not a drug or alcohol rehab group. We're talking about children. My company had an employee a few years back who took a tow motor and ran into a support beam of our 60,000 square foot building. We later had him drug tested and certainly had a level of THC in his system from the weekend prior to the accident. Guess what happened to him? He got fired. We've already experienced a drag queen performance, lap dance to be exact, on a 14-year-old in this school system. Also, a fatal shooting at Mount Tabor High School, multiple gun violations, violent fights, teacher harassment. You want me to continue? Are you considering lowering the standard in desperation to find teachers after losing 2 to Guilford County? Were those candidates frequent recreational users or true medicinally needed CBT patients? If an applicant is responsible enough to dry out prior to a test, why in the world would you give them, isn't responsible enough, why would you give them a job? However, if you really want to get the job as a frequent recreational user, you could hold off, pass, and never worry about being tested again. Do we still test student athletes? Do we randomly test teachers? If it is indeed CBD, that should be predefined, publicly acceptable THC levels. A recent study conducted by the Hunt Group found the best way to educate was by having quality teachers in the classroom. Quality teachers don't smoke, ingest, or inject drugs that could impact their ability to work with students. I cannot believe that we're having this conversation. I do believe, as the previous speaker, we need to address the code of conduct. I believe that is why we are losing valuable teachers. They do not want to step into our environment here in Forsyth County. Adding drug problems and potential drug problems to the system is going to make matters much worse for you. Bottom line, for our children. Thank you so much.
Ashley Wallace.
Good evening. I'm here to speak about changing the policy to allow teachers to fail a THC drug test and still be hired. I do not think that lowering the standards for people who are responsible for children is the way to go. I think the better option is to treat teachers better and to offer better incentives. When applying to become a teacher, along with many other careers, you know that you would be required to pass a drug test. So why would you choose to partake in an illegal activity that would cause you to lose that job opportunity? Also, the argument about CBD oil doesn't make sense to me. THC and CBD are 2 different things. Now, while CBD products could be contaminated with THC so that if you use it frequently enough, it could cause you to fail a drug test, is that teacher going to stop using it to pass the next 4 drug tests? I come from a family with addiction. My little brother passed away from drugs. I teach my child not to use drugs. How do we look our children in the face and tell them to follow the rules, don't break the law, and to not use drugs when we allow the ones teaching them to do so? Thank you.
Jennifer Leahy? Leahy, excuse me.
Good evening, students, colleagues, family members, Madam Chairwoman, board members, and Superintendent McManus. I'm here on behalf of my students, colleagues, and myself because I firmly believe that adding 15 minutes to our school days is not what is best for our students and staff. I'm a Math 4 teacher at Glenn High School and FCAE Senior Association representative, where about half of our staff are members. When I teach Unit 8, I teach about surveys, sampling methods, and bias. When I get to Unit 8 this semester, I will be using the survey the district put out in reference to adding 15 minutes to the school day starting in February as an example of bias. How was the survey biased, you ask? My students are stakeholders in this new calendar, and there was no option for them to select. They deserve to be surveyed as well. Many of our high school students work to help support their families and are expected to be at their jobs by 4 p.m. Adding 15 minutes to the end of the school day would negatively impact them as they can barely get to their vehicles or the drive-through line in 5 minutes. Not including these student voices, likely because their opinion would be unpopular, is unacceptable. I understand that while you voted to break the law and start the school year on August 1st, now you wish to follow the law that states that a school year must consist of a minimum of 185 days or 1,025 hours of instruction and at least 9 teacher workdays. If we need to delay school again or have an early dismissal, following the hour requirement would mean you would have to have another meeting to add more time to our school days. Don't we already need to trade May 21st, 22nd, and 23rd for January 10th, 13th, and 14th, as the January dates switched from student days to teacher work days? Therefore, the teacher work days in May should switch from teacher work days to student days, right? Isn't that a moot point? Please follow the calendar that has already been approved and do not add 15 minutes to the end of the school day. Thank you for the time you've allowed me to speak.
Teresa Bryant?
Hello, good evening. Superintendent McManus, Chair Kaplan, Vice Chair Bohannon, and esteemed board members and guests. First, I want to extend to all of you my heartfelt gratitude for the time you dedicated to reading my emails and those from other staff members, parents, and students this summer regarding West Forsyth's new principal, Ayanna Sutton Chaplin. She is truly an inspiration and is doing big changes in the school daily. Your willingness to engage in this dialogue speaks volumes for your commitment to our students and our staff, and I truly appreciate it. Tonight, I want to address a huge important issue, the makeup time for school missed due to inclement weather. The survey results indicate a split among the community, with 50% favoring the addition of minutes and 49.7% preferring to add days to the end of the year. Given this divide, I suggest we offer the community another option, one that teachers have already planned for, including lesson plans and packets as we were instructed. By providing this additional choice, we can better accommodate the diverse needs of our students, families, and ensuring that everyone has a viable path forward. I have previously shared with all of you my email, and I am encouraged by a lot of the positive feedback that I received from board members, parents, students, and staff regarding my suggestion of incorporating Saturday school into our options for makeup time. As outlined in the Makeup Days Calendar Law, GS 115C-84.2, we have the flexibility to make up time missed any day of the week, excluding Sundays and Veterans Day. With this in mind, I propose that we adopt at least 2 Saturdays for asynchronous remote learning. While simply adding 3 minutes to each class or extending the last period by 15 minutes may seem like a quick fix, it is not the most effective solution Dedicating an entire Saturday for instruction would allow us to explore topics in greater depth, fostering a richer learning experience for all of our students. In middle and high school settings, a mere 2 or 3 minutes per class will not lead to meaningful engagement. However, dedicating an entire period on a Saturday would enable us to create student-centered, data-driven lessons that genuinely captivate our audiences. Asynchronous remote learning provides the necessary flexibilities for teachers, students, and support staff to effectively participate in this makeup time. Earlier this year, you allowed 2 weeks where students could miss school for prearranged plans with no penalty, supporting the rationale behind my suggestion. I propose we hold 2 Saturday schools as asynchronous remote learning days and add May 21st as a makeup day. We cannot use May 22nd and 23rd because those are graduation days and have already been decided. To try to do this at the end of a calendar is ridiculous. Well, I teach EOC. I know the students need the instruction. Let me give it to them wholly during a class period on a Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope I pronounced this Vinalate Chala.
Madam Chairman and respected members of the board, Mr. Steve Wood asked me to make a comment about this issue of drug testing teachers. I retired from Wake Forest University faculty neuroscience programs, and I spent about last 10, 11 years in treating people addicted to opioids and other drugs. So the question now before you is about two applicants who failed the drug test for THC, and you didn't accept them, but they went somewhere else and got their jobs. So the question is before you is, should you change policy and accept them in future? My personal preference is probably not. It all depends on the situation, you see. If they get a THC prescription for certain medical disorders, then we're doing a disservice turning them away. But if they are doing it for just fun, as a recreational drug, then they're in danger of going down into other things. And that may not be good for both of them as well as the school and the students. So the two other things you can find in urine are the benzodiazepines, which are usually given for anxiety and sleep. These are prescription medicines, and opioids. And actually, I would worry less if I found opioids in urine, because the patient will tell you that he had a tooth removed and was given a pain pill or something like that. So the administrators can always ask the doctor, with the permission of the patient, and try to explain why it is positive. And once you know that, you can take the appropriate measure of either accepting the application for further consideration or for rejecting it outright. That's how I feel. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Yancy Sulu? Yasi? Sorry, I might be mispronouncing that. Yaucy? Okay. Tiffany Drew?
Good evening, Chairwoman Kaplan, Vice Chair Bohannon, Board, Superintendent McManus. Thank you for your time. I would like to speak about the proposed changes to Policy 4116.3, Staff Rights and Responsibilities. I believe it's a wise decision to re-examine and make updates to the district's pre-hire drug screening policy for non-CDL driver positions or those not requiring the use of a school vehicle. This change would allow us to expand our hiring pool and stay competitive with neighboring counties. There have been arguments made about lowering standards of educators we put in our classrooms. This policy change addresses that claim by stipulating that those who do test positive for THC and their pre-hire screening have to submit to up to 4 random drug tests throughout their first year at their own expense. That would mean education professionals who accept the job offer are agreeing to avoid THC products and are willing to pay from their own pocket multiple times to prove it. That sounds like dedication to the job to me. I would even argue this policy change could hold that group to a higher set of standards because they can't be randomly tested for THC, unlike current non-CDL transportation employees who must meet specific criteria required for a reasonable suspicion alcohol and/or drug test. It has been brought up there is concern of CBD products showing up on a drug test. This could be for a variety of reasons. I have a large packet of research here. I won't go through everything. But just to cover one, inaccurate label information. Studies show that CBD products sold are not labeled accurately. They can contain trace amounts of THC even when labeled THC-free because companies are allowed to make this claim if it's present under a certain level. It's important to note that the FDA does not regulate most CBD products, so unknowingly ingesting something is easier than one might think. The National Center for Complementary and Integrative Health backs up this claim, and the CDC even released a Health Alert Network health advisory about insufficient labeling because it is such a widespread problem. To be honest, some of these candidates who use CBD products that apply for our jobs might not know that they have this THC buildup until they have failed a drug test. With this knowledge, though, adjustments can be made, but an immediate dismissal wouldn't even give them the chance. So I appreciate your willingness to give these pre-hires a chance to prove themselves as education professionals. There's a need for quality employees in the district and someone who is willing to make a lifestyle change and take actions to reduce their risks for accidental exposure in order to meet job requirements is someone worth keeping around. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yancy Sieber.
Good evening. Thank you for giving me this time. I'm here to talk about the staff rights, and as a retired teacher, I think that from the start, the school board member should have common sense measures. I love the words common sense in the classroom. That words or actions that are inappropriate in the classroom will not be tolerated. We're there to protect our students, but we're also there to protect our staff. These actions should lead to consequences. It takes time away from learning just because of the action this person is doing, but it also takes time away from the students that are there to learn. Out of the classroom, boom. If you start something, you're out of the classroom. You go to the counselor, you go to the principal, you go wherever. And your parents should be called 3 times, you're out.
I'm sorry. What is the agenda topic?
Conducts and teacher staff rights.
No, ma'am. It is about the drug testing for that.
Okay.
Yes.
Well,
sorry.
I also believe that teaching is a stressful job if it's done right. If you're done right as a teacher, you go home and you're exhausted. Okay. It's not a place for someone who is dealing with drug and alcohol rehab. This is the heart and the mind of children that you're dealing with. And there's plenty of different areas that people can go into to work out their rehab. But with children, you got to really stop and think about that. The atmosphere should not be a testing site. And just for I did not know that I would not be allowed to talk about the conduct code, which to me is really an important thing for our teachers, because I was a teacher. And by the way, some people say, well, that's really hard. I think probably some of you elderly, whatever you want to call it, like me, I'm 74, we were raised that way. That's the way we were raised. You do it, there's consequences. Here, we do it like there's excuses. So to me, I'm off the subject.
I'm sorry, ma'am. You need to stick with the agenda items.
So anyway, I'm one of those hard but people, okay? But because of that, I have 4 daughters. One is an IT. one is a military, one is a doctor, and one is a lawyer. I didn't do that. They did that. Kids need structure.
Ma'am, I'm sorry.
Structure.
Thank
That's all
you.
I'm asking
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Katie, Son, and Lee.
Good evening, board members and superintendent. I am here to talk about the schedule and all the changes that we're talking about both for this year and for next year. I think across the board, as you probably read in your emails, people like to know what's going to happen, right? They want to know what's going to happen as parents, as staff. I know people want to, like, am I going to be able to go on this trip, or when is the last day of work, or when's the last day of school? People want to know. And so I do support adding days into next year so that we're not in this weird position that we're in this year. I hope to God we do not have 2 straight weeks of snow days right after Christmas break again, because I don't know if we'll survive that. As a parent, I'm sure the staff, way to go staff. So happy for you. But as a parent, you know, it was a lot of time with my lovely children, who I love very much. But anyway, moving on from that, we all just want to know what to expect. And I think expecting for things to be unexpected is the best thing we can do to help parents prepare when we're planning trips to see family, etc. Trying to figure out childcare is a big issue for our family in the summer. And if we don't know when school is going to end, that makes that even harder for us to be able to work as well. Again, snow days and working, not fun. And I hope this will be covered in the superintendent's update that is coming. But families also want to know what to expect with changes under the new federal administration. I had lots of messages from folks. Is school lunch going to get cut off today at 5 p.m.? Is Title I funding going to get cut off? And I know we don't know. I know we don't know.
We just need to stick to the agenda
The
items.
superintendent's update, is that on the, that's on the agenda?
It's not public,
Okay.
so we haven't been discussing it. So,
Okay, well, I will bring it at the end. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Alan Daniel.
Good evening. I know I told y'all I wasn't going to be here tonight. I did not forego my son's wrestling match to be here. They defeated 2 teams in 1 hour, and my son pinned his guy in 20 seconds. So that's why I'm here. I want to address the 15 minutes. I sent you all an email today suggesting another way to use the 15 minutes, because I think that's what you're going to do. If we would add 15 minutes to first period for a week, 15 minutes to second period the next week, 15 minutes to third period the next, and 15 minutes to fourth the next, and start over, teachers would actually have 15 minutes to do some instruction. As I said in my email, my son is in 5 AP courses. He has missed 5 days of instruction in 5 AP courses that we will not make up before he takes his exam. Okay? So you're cheating him out of the instruction that he needs to be successful in those courses. Whatever you do this year, please, 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 add 10 days to next year's calendar starting in August. Okay? Have a makeup day in August. It can be a teacher work day if we don't need it. And September, October, all the way through. Okay? Build them in as work days, remote days. This year, honest to goodness, looked like nobody that worked on the calendar had ever done a school calendar before. I mean, we put 3 days of makeup, and then we put graduation on top of that. Really? Okay, enough of that. I want to address the whole marijuana thing. And again, I touched on that in my email. An elementary school principal in Florida apparently was a party girl. She was hosting parties, drunken parties, with high school students, and one of her teachers was a guest. Okay, that speaks to culture. It speaks to expectation. I know marijuana is not the same thing as drunkenness, but if we say we don't care, then we open ourselves up to a lower standard of expectation, and that's the last thing we need. Thank you.
Thank you. We have 5 discussion items tonight. First, Frederica Stokes. Dr. Stokes, our Assistant Superintendent of Student Services, will discuss the WSFCS rides bus expectations.
Good evening, Board Chair Kaplan, Vice Chair Bohannon, members of the board, and Superintendent McManus. This evening, Shannon Dobson, our Director of Behavior Intervention and Support, will share information regarding WSFCS rides bus expectations. The Behavior Support Team has worked with the Transportation Department, bus drivers, and school administrators to develop common bus expectations for students, drivers, parents, and administrators. The teams have been collaborating since September 2024 on this program. Shannon will share with you how this information has been shared with students and families. She will share with you the details of the RIDES program.
Good evening, Board. Good evening, Superintendent McManus. I feel like I need like a little campaign song now as we've been doing the RIDES campaign. But thank you for Dr. Stokes. Just that introduction kind of summarized exactly what we've been working on. And this first piece just really explains our rollout. Like she said, we started this work back in September, and it really was just an idea that the team had. We've been doing work with the Transportation Department since we began our Code of Character, Conduct, and Support with depersonalization strategies, de-escalation, how you support positive behaviors on the bus. And so the team really just had an idea in talking with transportation about, hey, have we thought about creating some uniformity with expectations? And so we kind of got ahead of ourselves, and it proved to serve us really well. So currently, this is what we have done with our RIDES campaign and our framework starting in January, but again, it went back to September. We have worked with our administrators and staff. We've developed lesson plans. We've gotten feedback, of course, and worked with transportation. We've communicated to our families. We've had open forums with bus drivers. Even today, we had a session of continued professional development with our transportation staff that will continue throughout the year. And our schools have been going through a series of lesson plans that were developed that are happening in the classroom with videos that are showcasing exactly what does RIDES mean, because we want to showcase positive behavior expectations and give examples for the students for them to understand exactly what we mean about how we conduct ourselves on the bus and create that safe learning environment. Today we had a media event, and then on February 3rd, we really go live. So we feel prepared. Of course, with anything, there may be, changes in continuous feedback along the way. So what is RIDES? It really is developing those expectations, a framework for outlining what we want to see, what we want to recognize, and then also it looks at what happens when misbehavior occurs on the bus. So specifically, our transportation staff, along with my team members, came up with the expectations. You can kind of see what they stand for: responsibility, integrity, discipline, excellence, and safety. But it also aligns to what behavior, what that looks like for our students, for our staff, for our families, and even for our administrators and drivers. And so we worked with them to go through every single one of those expectations about what do we mean when we say responsibility? What do we mean when we say discipline? And so that not only is ongoing within our classrooms and supporting students, but also within the professional development that we're doing with transportation. So, of course, with anything, we can imagine that our bus is what we like to call a moving classroom. There are specific things, when you're driving, I think about myself as a parent and all the things, I give my children when I'm driving. They have devices or something to entertain them, and it's a little bit harder on a bus, right? It's a moving classroom. So there are going to be, anytime we bring people together, and especially in an unstructured environment, we know that behavior is going to happen. So how are we responding? So not only are we looking at how we support positive behavior, but what are going to be the actionable steps that we uniformly, consistently apply when there's a bus kind of unskilled behavior that happens. There's specifically some on-the-bus actions that we've worked with transportation staff to develop. When you look at those are specifically aligned to our code of character, conduct, and support with level 1 and 2. And then as you move up, of course, with incidents, there are specific things that we know that our administrators are going to respond to and have to have a conversation about what's the consequence, but also what's the intervention to support that unskilled behavior. And this just outlines our bus discipline matrix. It's kind of 2 pages long, but the document itself is just one. I will say that this is, it's not separate from our code of conduct, the discipline matrix within there. It is something that kind of lives inside. And so all of those behaviors and infractions align with that. So one of the other pieces to our initiative is, how bus drivers are going to inform administrators when there has been an issue. So with that, they have a discipline write-up. This isn't something new. They've always had a form of communicating to administrators. We're just really focusing now on how we ensure that we're closing that discipline loop. So meaning that if I'm driving the bus and there's something that's happened, I need to make sure that when I hand this right up to the administrator, that there's that coming back to me in conversation of what happened, what was the response. And you can see that is noted there where it talks about when are we entering it into Educator's Handbook. That is our school-wide, tracking system for discipline infractions. But then also the conversation that the administrator had with the bus driver. So letting them know, was there a bus suspension? What are we doing to respond to that behavior? We're also ensuring that this information goes to our families because we want them to be aware of what's happening, along with, again, our drivers. So just like with anything, what gets recognized gets repeated. So we also want to make sure that we are enforcing or reinforcing that positive behavior. And a lot of our bus drivers and schools already do this really well. So this is just kind of reinforcing already what they do. Our bus drivers they have these sheets that are recording rides expectations where they can jot down students' names. They simply are going to circle, like, were they showing discipline? Were they showing excellence? And every week they'll hand that to their administrators. And our administrators, because we already have systems in place within our school, are rolling that into how they acknowledge and make sure that we're, recognizing our students and entering that information also into our Educator's Handbook system, because it also allows you to input, like, when the good behavior happens, and it's called a merit. So our most important audience are our students, and so ways that we've supported them, I've already tapped into that with the lessons that are going around through our schools, or we've just finishing up, and then ensuring that we are connecting them to any school-wide implementation system that is acknowledging behavior. Our communication with families, because we know that those are important stakeholders, and hopefully everyone that's here tonight, if you have children in our district, then you've heard our messages, our emails, you've watched your parent video, you're familiar with that matrix, and the agreement that we're asking everyone to acknowledge that I'm reviewing the expectations with my child or my children and that matrix, as a way to continue being that support partner in our work, viewing all of our social channels and videos. That's critical to ensuring that our mission gets out there. This is just kind of a sampling of the form and the agreement that has went out to our families. And then what are our next steps? I think I went through everything that happened in January, and then we're moving again live February 3rd and making those connections, and then beginning really actively the monitoring of the entering of those disciplinary infractions that are going into Educator's Handbook, just like we monitor our data now. And that pretty much sums it up and turns us over to questions.
Board Member Kuhn?
Couple of things. I know some of this came up when we had our parent guardian advisory council the other night. Could you speak to how bus drivers were involved in the merit system and all of that, to kind of talk about how they were included in the discussions? And then also, I found out that all bus riders, not just those that ride, like if you're ever going to be on an activity bus, need to pay attention to this, because I did not pay attention because I don't have bus riders. And I think that's something really important that we need to let folks know, is this is literally for every student.
Yeah, thank you for that, and thank you for reinforcing that point. So back in September, through our work that we were already doing with transportation, we met with bus drivers. Of course, you know, we captured the ones that were able to. So through several virtual sessions, a survey went out to them, and they actually selected which pieces of rides. So each behavior that represents rides, that was their selection, and we implemented that into our system. And then we went back with them, reviewed, you know, what expectations it looks like, what does that sound like on the bus, and then we did another series of forums with them where we got feedback specifically on the expectations and the merits. Took their feedback to do again some calibration of that. So it's been ongoing, and like I said, it's continuing. Just like today, we were working with them through professional development.
Board Member Crowley?
Thank you. It appears that some of the consequences seem more stringent than what they are for the classroom. Can you address that?
Sure, yeah. That's a great point. I think that just goes back to what we were saying, that we acknowledge that the bus driver, that's a moving classroom, and the bus driver doesn't have it at their disposal tools such as a classroom teacher would have. Like as a teacher, one of my first responses to behavior concerns is I can get up, move closer to you. You know, I can kind of scan the environment. In fact, even today, one of our bus drivers said, you know, my eyes are forward. It's really hard for me to also to navigate looking back in the rear view. So we acknowledge that, and we know that as a district, we have to make sure that we're closing that loop and help with our administrators, and that we're having those conversations to not only set the expectation for the positive behaviors, recognize those, but then also continue having those conversations with students about how we support and teach new behaviors that are unskilled.
Board Member Brown Gaither?
I'm glad you asked that question, and I love the way you answered it, because I always tell my students, of course, when you're on a bus, that's quite different from a classroom. So I think it needs to be a little escalation there. The thing I had a question about was the discipline matrix, that some of them, they were the same exact thing and not an escalation. And the one I'm looking at in particular is that level 1. When we looked at the third write-up and the fourth write-up, they're the exact same. And I almost feel like it needs to be escalated. So if you say a 1 to 5 day bus suspension under the third write-up, the fourth write-up maybe should be 3 to 8 or whatever. It could be an overlap, but it shouldn't be the exact same.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Next, Jonathan Wilson, our Chief Safety, Security, and Emergency Management Officer, will discuss the Open Gate Weapons Detection System.
Okay, Madam Chair, Vice Chair Bohannon, members of the board, and Superintendent McManus, I am not Jonathan. So
You're not Jonathan Wilson.
I appreciate that. He couldn't be here this evening, so he asked Brent and I to come. For those of you that don't know me personally, I'm your Director of Security, Chad Williams, and I have Brent Cook with us here as well. We were asked to come back and discuss Open Gate a little bit more. There may have been questions or there may have been concerns, so we wanted to come back and address any of those questions, anything that we may be able to answer. Where's my, oh, there we go. So again, talking about Open Gate, we answered quite a few questions before, and we're going to go through basically it's the same slides, and I'm not going to waste a whole lot of your time, but want to make sure that we understand what the system is, what the system is about. The first thing is that no one system is ever going to solve every security problem that we have on campus. We're not saying that Open Gate can. We're not saying that Open Gate will. What we are saying is that Open Gate is part of an overall system. It is just one step in a multiple layer system that we want to address. Along with that, we have our cameras, which you all know about. We have keypads at our entrances. We have fencing around a lot of the schools. We also have our Say Something app, which we have found to be extremely helpful. One of our biggest security measures is actually the way that we communicate with our school community, whether that be with students, whether that be with staff, whether that be with administration. And the tips that they give us is a huge part of our campus safety. Obviously, we have our response protocols with our standard response system and our standard with our standard response system. Then, of course, like we were talking about before, it's our student-parent engagement. It does me good when I come to board meetings and I hear parents that are concerned and I hear parents that want to know more and what's going on in the school. So we need that engagement. That shows that they're paying attention to what's going on in their schools and also the safety of their children. And then, of course, the Open Gate system itself. So when we talk about the Open Gate weapons detection system, again, it's not your standard metal detector. It is something that is completely different. It is fast, it is automatic, and it is unprecedented screening. The biggest thing for us, it is no divesting of backpacks, purses, and bags. The students, the staff members, visitors to our schools can walk directly through the Open Gate system. They don't have to take their backpacks off. They don't have to lay their purses down. All of that is getting screened as they're going through the system itself. So you don't actually have that same feeling of going through a metal detector that we all know and that we all recognize going through airports and sporting events and things like that. The extreme transit flow or throughput, we're averaging 300 students per 15 minutes. So that's just one system. That is one set of towers. We can get 300 students in 15 minutes. So obviously, when you have multiple systems at a school, you can just simply add that number up. If you have 5 systems at a school, I can get 1,500 students in 15 minutes. And obviously, how does that equate to class time? How does that equate to students getting off of the bus or getting out of the car rider line, actually getting them through a secure protocol and getting them in the classroom or getting them to tutoring sessions or sports or whatever it is that they have first thing in the morning? These are battery powered, so we don't have to worry about actually plugging it up someplace. We don't have to be close to a wall. We can pick it up. We can move it anywhere that we want to go. These systems are actually built and made to be indoors and outdoors. One of the problems that we have with our metal detectors that we use now is transporting them either into buildings or outside of buildings. If it's football games, if it's graduation ceremonies outside, how do we have those metal detectors set up outside? And then how's the weather going to affect those systems if we can't get them moved back in time? They're quick to set up and install. They only weigh 25 pounds and with less than 1 minute setup time. So we can take them anywhere that we want to go in the school. We can take them anywhere that we want to go in the building. If we wanted to put them here at the back door for board meetings, we could simply take them out of a closet, set them up, turn them on. Within a minute, they're ready to go. So we don't have to worry about an extensive setup time. Just about anybody can carry them. They weigh 25 pounds. When we first got the ones that we have, we were just picking them up by the handles and carrying them around the office just because we do silly things like that sometimes. Again, one of the big things that, especially when we started doing extensive searches last year, the traditional detectors require searching each and every bag. If we put somebody through a traditional metal detector, then we're having to also search each bag that they bring in. So those of you that have been in schools lately know that students don't ever just carry one backpack anymore. For some reason, they're carrying 2 and 3 and a lunchbox and their sports equipment and everything else that goes along with it. So each one of those bags has to be searched when they go through a traditional metal detector. Very labor intensive, obviously, and it's taking staff away from their normal duties. part of the conversation that we had last time we're here was that the staff needs to be doing certain things in the morning. The staff needs to be in the hallway. The staff needs to be in their classrooms or watching other doors as part of our greater security system. We don't need 6, 7 staff members watching one metal detector. And that's really what these metal detector, or the old metal detectors, are requiring us to do. More importantly, the staff aren't comfortable in that environment. We didn't hire teachers and we didn't hire staff members to be security officers. That's not what we're paying them to do, and they're not comfortable in that environment, and we need to recognize that. With the open gate system, again, it's allowing the students or your visitors to walk through. If it goes off for whatever reason, most of the time we know why it's going off. There are certain things that are going to set it off, but we're not having to have teachers and admin act as security staff. It can be operated by 3 staff per unit. So typically where we have 6 or 7 that we've had to use for metal detectors, with each one of these open gate systems, again, just the 2 towers, we can operate it with 3 staff members or less. I need somebody who is actually just watching what the system's doing. I need somebody who is taking objects that we know are going to set the system off. And then I need somebody who, in the rare case that something does go off, actually has to do a bag search. Realistically, with enough time and enough, the staff becoming familiar with the system, we could easily knock that down to 2 staff members per system. And again, you're talking 15, 20 minutes. So have Brent here. He's going to answer or discuss with you some of the electronics behind it and warranty information.
Yeah, so just the nuts and bolts, and we went over this last time. I mean, they got a 2-year warranty. They run off of regular batteries like going up a power drill. There's nothing specific about the battery. You can go to Home Depot and buy them. Other facilities are continuing to use them, and more are buying into this product since we've started our pilot. 90% faster than traditional metal detectors, and we still stand by that. And we've been running this pilot since we started, and every 4 weeks we take it to a different set of schools. And so we've seen the same results at every school we take it to. I mean, it's consistent. We see the same thing everywhere we go. This is basically the breakdown. We did the breakdown last time, 102 total units, and that would be for middle and high school. Optimal operation, meaning the way we are staffing it now for this pilot is what we're trying to do, when we go to a school. The base plates, Chad mentioned that they're weatherproof. Because they're so light, if you do take them outside, there's a stabilizing plate that they have to bolt to so that the wind doesn't blow them around, because they're pretty lightweight. The 30 test pieces, I know it looks crazy, it's like $7,600, but it's a calibrated piece that mimics a handgun. And so every time you set them up, you walk through it with it, walk through it without it, and that's how you check to make sure it's working. Training, we've already done all the training. We had a huge training with all the principals. Tax everything, it's 1.881. No recurring costs other than if the batteries go out, and talking with our partners at LJVM, they've never had to replace batteries, and they use them every time they have an event. So I think that was it. We just wanted to do it quick.
Board Member Barr.
Yes, I guess this is for our superintendent. I think I'm sold on Open Gate and was the last time we heard the presentation. What do you see as our next steps and timeline?
So I brought this back tonight because the board mentioned that once we had the audit, and the audit we thought would be back tonight, where you actually could confirm the fund balance, you were interested in us bringing it back to have the discussion again. So that's why I brought it back tonight. We don't have the final audit, but in talking with Tommy today, he has a draft report. It's just not in final form. And so basically, what he said last week about what we have in fund balance, which is 11 million, the board wants to keep 11 in the fund balance, and so that's what we have. So we're here to share it with you all. We did apply for a state grant. We are waiting to find out if we got that grant. If we got that grant, I think it was going to cover the middle schools, if I'm correct.
Yeah,
And we haven't found out yet, right? We didn't as of yesterday.
No, they haven't
Okay.
awarded that piece of it yet.
So really, the reason we brought it back now, it's not an action item, is because the board needs to have a discussion, another discussion about it, and is that something that we would want to use fund balance for?
Board Member Kuhn.
So I never thought I would be the person sitting here saying that I am in favor of these. And I'm sure that shocks you too. Having been through them and seen them work, they're great because it doesn't feel like you're going through a metal detector. And I appreciate that. And I appreciate the how kids have responded to them. My concern is our open campuses. Because right now, sometimes they are using wristbands or marking on the hands, but there's no real accountability to keep track. If a student leaves the building, did they come back in a side door? Did they come back through the metal? So I think those are some of my concerns when it comes to because we have a lot of open high school campuses.
Yeah, and that's good, and that has come up since day one. We knew that was going to be a concern, and we knew that was something that we are. I don't say this lightly, but it is literally a question that is on our mind every day. Right now, the open gate system is at West. West is, we have been to 8 high schools with open gate, and we've been to 1 middle school. The first challenge that we really faced with a larger open campus was Reynolds. We made some modifications there and were able to come up with a system that we felt worked better than any place else. West is really a challenge, and we are there. We are there on a consistent basis trying to come up with something. But that also goes back to the open gate being one part of an overall security system. Our open campuses, the way that some of the schools in the district are designed is we're going to have to lean more on our other security features than just saying that metal detectors or a weapons detection system are going to solve every problem. It's not. And we are having to come up with other options, whether that be, the obvious, the easiest solution is, hey, we need to put up fencing. But then it's, well, what does it look like? What does it feel like? What kind of movement do you actually have? How much is it going to cost? Things like that. That's just some of the things. But then it's, okay, can we adjust our keypad schedule? Can we, the way that we work keypads, can we lock certain doors at certain times and keep other ones open? And still understanding how the students and the staff need to move across the campus. So I'm not going to lie to you and say, yep, it's going to fix every problem. It absolutely is not, and we're trying to come up with additional ways to focus on it. But we do believe that open gate is an important part of that overall process.
Vice Chair Bohannon.
Thank you. So my question is around, so I know that we used grants from the state to purchase the kind of standard metal detectors that we have already. And I wondered why we didn't go with open gate first, or if there was a consideration around that.
Basically, it was a cost issue because these are extremely more expensive. And so with the amount that we were awarded with those state grants, we couldn't have done it for every school. There was just no way to do, this unit is roughly in the $20,000 range per. Our traditional ones are roughly in the $3,000 range. So, we could either have done 4 high schools or we could have done all the high schools when we did the first grant rollout. And then we rolled it out for, to expand that more. It was basically a cost thing because you couldn't say, well, this school needs them and this school doesn't. You had to be fair. So that was why originally.
Right. Well, I almost wonder because I mean, like my colleagues, obviously open gate works a lot better and it's just more efficient. But I almost wonder if we were going to be put in the, if we were going to ultimately make a decision to use fund balance to purchase these, I almost would have whether us put the grant money that we got a couple years ago along with fund balance to purchase open gate for the whole system versus now we've used the money from the grants to purchase those other metal detectors and now potentially we're going to make a $1.8 million purchase with fund balance. So I almost wish but again, hindsight is 20/20. Yeah. I just think about sort of from a fiscal standpoint what probably would have been better.
And we used some of our grant fund to do this pilot. that was how we were able to do this pilot, was we used some of the Safer Schools grant funding to do this, pilot of 8 units that we're using right now. So, I mean, yeah, hindsight's always like that. And honestly, this technology's it's really came about in the past 4 or 5 years. And I wouldn't have been comfortable with what was available when we did our first traditional ones, because there were some products that were trying to do this, but I wasn't comfortable with how much they cost versus a recurring subscription cost, and I didn't like the setup, so.
Got it. Thank you.
Board Member Barr.
Yeah, I know we said that one of the options for buying this is waiting on a grant. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we applied for the Center for Safer School, well, it is a grant. It's one of the state safety grants, and they haven't given the award yet for any of the equipment for any district.
Okay, and what's the time frame for the grant? Because I think what I want to make sure we don't do is just kind of wait and wait. I think we just need to move on this with urgency, because.
Yeah, they can never, I mean, they've never tell us the time frame. They awarded, this grant was structured a little differently, where you could get some SRO funding with it, with some school districts that didn't have any SROs, they were throwing some money at that. They awarded some of that, but they haven't done any of the equipment, and if you ask them, they'll say, it's coming.
Yeah,
You know,
well, I just want to make sure we just don't wait and wait and wait. And God forbid, don't want to be a fear monger, but something happens and we say, hey, we could have implemented this faster. So I don't know whether Chair or Vice Chair, if we need to get this on the agenda to vote for as soon as possible. Not quite sure what that process is.
Yes, Board Member Kuhn.
I think that we really need to wait for the audit. We really need to get that, and I think wrap our minds around that before we can set up a time to have an action on it.
So when, the night that, that the auditor comes to present, which I'm hoping it is the next board meeting, that we could put it on as an action. We don't need to do this whole presentation for the third time or the second time. So, but I will just know that the grant was only going to cover, I think, 800 if we got the full amount, correct?
It was a $500,000.
500, sorry, not even
That was
800.
the max that we applied for, that was
Right.
all they'll award.
So 500. So even if we got the grant and heard about the grant, it's not enough, so we would need to still use another funding source.
And along with that, the grant would only allow us, if we were to use the money to purchase open gates with that grant, we would only be allowed to put them in middle schools. So trying to balance that out as well, the way that grant is structured.
Yes, Board Member Barr.
Okay, last comment, I think, for
And the
tonight,
next
maybe
board.
not. Just want to make sure I'm clear that more than, we're looking at the audit to come back in our next board meeting or next committee meeting? Okay, all right, good.
Board Member Wood.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Say one more time about the recurring cost.
There is none. There's not a subscription cost at all for these. So
Say that one more time.
there's not a subscription. So when you buy them, it's like you just have them, you own them. And that was, and back to a previous question, that was kind of some of our thought around when we did the traditional, is because you own them. A lot of other products out at that time were lease type of things, and you never want to, we didn't feel comfortable spending the money. So that was one reason we leaned toward purchasing, and that's what we always want to try and do is purchase something instead of getting into a recurring lease type of program, so, exactly.
Chair Kaplan?
Yes.
Team members, really quickly, can you, with the ones that we already ordered, the ones that we have now that are the older model we got with a grant when we first started metal detecting, can you talk about, I know y'all have already thought about this, once we get these, the new system, what are we going to be doing with the other ones? And to actually address Board Members Bohannon's comment around, we don't want to waste those grant dollars that were used then, so will we be using them in different ways?
Yes, and the short answer is yes. So we still have all the ones that we have now. And one of the options, and not trying to let the cat out of the bag, but we look at east and west and understand that we have different buildings and we have different facilities. Understanding that we won't be able to put Open Gate in every one of those buildings. If West has 13 buildings, we can't put 13 different Open Gate systems. So do we start using some of the traditional metal detectors in some of those other buildings to, again, expand what our security footprint looks like on a school campus, whether it be west, whether it be east, whether it be Reynolds, so that you may, for a majority of the school or a majority of the students may go through an open gate system, but for those particular classes that are further out or we don't have an open gate available, we can still send them through a traditional metal detector, understanding that that's not the best way that we want to do it, but that is still an option, and that's still making use of equipment that we have.
Yes, Board Member Kuhn.
To that point, sorry, I know y'all probably want to move on from this, but how does that work with staffing them? Because that is a big complaint, is the amount of staff. Obviously, Open Gate brings that down, but if we're going to an open campus that's going to require that, then we're back to needing the additional staff that is a problem to begin with.
And that's what we were talking about at 10:30 this morning in the office, as a matter of fact. And again, it's not the best way to do it, but trying to make use of the resources that we already have on hand, and looking at that and how can we come up with different ways to secure an open campus. And if it came down to it, if we needed to run metal detectors or a traditional metal detector in a building that we know, and just an example, this isn't real numbers, but we know in this particular building at the beginning of school, they only have 3 classes in this building. That may be a situation where we put a traditional metal detector so that those 3 classes can go through and you could run that with 2 or 3 staff members, if that, and go ahead and make sure that those students are cleared, and then everybody else would be running with an open gate. So it would still cut down. We want to use it in places where the numbers would still be substantially lower.
Yes, Board Member Crowley.
Yeah, you know, 2 things, looking at the, kids that are constantly on and off campus because of taking classes at Forsyth Tech, going to the Career Center, using any system. I mean, like you said, the multi-layered approach is going to have to happen, because even wristbands, if my child went through and got screened in the morning and got a wristband, but then leaves that campus to go to the Career Center for a class and then comes back, you don't know if they've picked up stuff along the way. So one of the things that, in talking to a lot of high school students, that they've said they would feel safer with is doing random class-wide or school-wide searches. So, the random part is key, because as several people have mentioned here before, as soon as they see that it's a day that they're checking. Now, I don't know if we get the open gate systems, would we be checking them every day?
Yeah, so
Okay.
with the open gates are designed to be an everyday system.
Okay.
To your point about random room checks, we do allow that at our schools,
Okay.
as far as our safe entry plan. So the principals and the staff have been made aware that they can do random rooms. We have spoke with legal to make sure that when we do random, that it is completely random, that statute allows us to do it, case law allows us to do it, and then set down guidelines on what those random room searches look like. So they are in the process of doing those. Several high schools have already done those, and even to your point, Career Center does it on a regular basis.
Okay, and then my last point is that the most recent event with a gun on campus happened on a sidewalk and street. And that's actually the second time that that's happened in that location in the past 3.5 years. So what is being done to address a boulevard that bisects a middle school and high school campus as far as student safety and keeping it free of weapons?
So it is and it continues to be a community project. So being able to say that a metal detector or an open gate system is going to fix that problem, there's absolutely no way that we could ever say that. So that's going to have to go back to our community partnerships, what we're doing with our community partner organizations, what we're doing with our law enforcement partners. One of the meetings that we had at one point, it was actually brought up and discussed that we see what we could do to shut down Northwest, which I look at it and say, I have absolutely no idea how you would ever be able to do that. But trying to combat what we know to be street violence or guns in the streets or anywhere outside of our campus is going to be something that
They're
is
on
going to be.
campus. It's on campus.
Well, I'm just saying, outside of a traditional building, is going to be something that's going to be extremely difficult for us to handle. It's going to be something that's going to be extremely difficult for us to manage. Who's walking up and down a public street, what it is that they're carrying. And that's really going to have to come back to those community partnerships and those community programs that are in place to either deal with gun violence as a community, or what does law enforcement need us to do and what can we assist law enforcement in doing.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, Tricia McManus, our superintendent, will discuss the options for making up instructional hours.
Yes, and I'm gonna do it from here. All of you have the calendar, I thought you might need a visual as you look at dates. So we just put the calendar in front of you so you could see that. So basically, about 2 weeks ago, I did an update during superintendent update to show you where we are with our times. And so basically what this shows is that you need, our original calendar was 1,044 hours. State requires 1,025. Our last year's calendar, school calendar, the current school calendar has 174 student days. The one that you approved for next year already has 176, and we are bringing it back after this item to add even more days, and that'll be the next agenda item. So the future, the more days you add, the better off you are with the hours, making up the hours. So basically, we missed September 27th, December 3rd. It shows you all those times. So we were basically 25 hours short. September 27th, December 3rd were forgiven. So the two makeup days already approved by the board were March 7th and April 21st for 12 hours. That meant 13 hours is what we're talking about now. If we get, keep that in your mind, 13 hours is what we're talking about that we need to make up. If there are any other weather events, many times, we got early winter weather this year. Many times that weather comes late January, even though we're getting to the late January, so that's good news, early February. And if that happens, we'll use then the 5 remote days. Districts can use only 5 remote days in their updating of their weather. That's it. And that's law. So you can't use more than 5. So basically, it's 13. So what we did last time we were together, I showed you these 2 options. And so if we were to start February 3rd and added 15 minutes to every day, that would be getting us to 1,029.8 hours, which gives you a tiny cushion there if you ever needed to do some type of delay, which that may not even be necessary. On the right side, and these are the night that you all voted, which I think was December 10th, if I'm correct. These 3 dates were listed in the calendar with snowflakes after that board meeting, and that was May 21st, 22nd, 23rd. And so those were at the end of the year, and I'm going to talk to you about the impact of both of these options and the pros and cons of both. So those are the 3 days that had snowflakes in the calendar for makeup. The reason we added even the 15-minute as an option and put it on the schedule, even brought it up at all, was due to feedback from people when they started seeing we were going to do the 21st, 22nd, 23rd. We started getting emails, people contacting, people stopping in schools, just kind of data that people were saying, is there any other option? Could we add 15 minutes? That's the only reason we brought that option, because we already approved the 21st, 22nd, and 23rd for the makeup days. All right, so with that said, we showed this last time, 15-minute impact. This is what the schedule would look like. Remember, there's a note there that we have with 14 different bell schedules. This is not the same for all, but it's for the majority. These are the times. All right, next slide. So we looked at the survey data. I'm going to show you that in a minute, but here are some of the pros and cons. The pros of a 15-minute allows you to keep the workdays at the end of the year, which include retesting. We're going to talk about that in a minute. It allows to provide additional time. I know that, people have talked a lot about that separate time across each period. That's really not effective, but you could use a block of time, a 15-minute block for certain things. It allows to avoid scheduling conflicts with testing and graduations, which with the other one, you'll see in a minute that we will have to work through all of that, and you can work through all of that. Cons, creates conflicts. This was the biggest one that came from student emails, from parents, and it says creating conflict with after-school schedules for work and for other activities. A lot of kids have after-school things that they're going to. Parents are running between schools. I mean, just all kinds of things that are created by that. And it provides, there is also unintended consequence of this, which we can also address, which is providing fewer days of employment for certain employee groups unless we offer them other work opportunities. And Chris can explain more of that if you have questions about that as we keep going. Impact end of the year. This is a lot of words, but I really wanted you to have the whole picture. So follow with me and stop me if it gets confusing at any time. So testing is the last 10 days of school for elementary and middle school, and it's the last 5 days for high school. So if you look at your calendars, I mean, that's the easiest way to have you follow along. So right now, it would have started on May 12th to 23rd for elementary and middle, and it would have been 19th to the 23rd for high schools. Okay, that's currently if we did not have to make up any time, or if we didn't choose to make up time at the end of the year. What? No, this is EOG. We're talking about with testing and retesting, it's the EOG testing. It is not AP testing. Graduation schedules will not change through either option, so just know that we're not changing graduation schedules. Reteaching and EOG retesting, because if you all remember, and the board has not approved a retesting plan, so I want you to know that. I think that's coming in the next couple, in February, board meeting. You've not approved a retesting, you have to approve that plan every year. Last year, the board did approve it, and it did make a difference for some schools with those retests and students that took advantage of that. But that was built into the calendar this year, which is why we have so many days at the end. The reteach and retest was built in, so you weren't adding more days where you had to pay employees to come back and do those things, do the reteaching and retesting. So basically, it was going to take place on the 21st, 22nd, and 23rd. And then there were 2 post-planning days for teachers on the 27th and 28th. So that's what the current calendar looks like. So just know with 3 makeup days at the end of the school year, yes, it would allow for 3 more days of instruction prior to testing, not AP testing, but prior to your EOG testing. Reteaching and retesting would have to move. And so, again, if you look at your calendar, it would need to change to May 27th through 29th, which would then, and we'd have to add, if you look again, our employees' last day, those that are 10-month employees, you would need to add the days of the 29th and 30th to the calendar. So basically, testing, now I'm going to confuse everybody, but 27th through the 29th would be the reteach, retest, if the board passes that, with May 30th as post-planning. So basically, we were coming back after Memorial Day for the 27th, 28th, which would have been post-planning days. It would just turn those into reteaching. We would have to add days at the end there for employees that would be part of the reteaching and retesting if the board approves that. That does not mean it has to be all employees. Not all need to be involved in it. And a lot of that would also depend on how many students are going to come back and take advantage of that option. And if you have any questions about that, Andy probably knows our numbers from last year of like how many folks took advantage of that. So this in a nutshell is what the impact would be. Does that make sense based on looking at the calendar? I know there's a lot to it, but does it make sense what we would need to do looking at the calendar? All right, so next slide. Then we'll come back if you have questions. All right, so pros of this. Yes, there would be 3 full days of instruction. It would allow us to keep current bell schedules as it is. It would not impact the after-school activities for families. The cons would be people have those plans at the end, same thing, that could impact families. It could change it's going to change terms of employment for those involved in retesting. We would need to have people come back after that last day. So there will be a financial impact if the board does approve the retesting plan that comes back in February. So with that, survey. So the survey was administered, it was not a very long window, and it was administered, if you turn to the next one. Here are the responses. It's a little blurry, but you can see that basically 9,700 and parents filled it out, and 2,975 staff members completed the survey. So about 12,138 parents were asked to pick where their children attend school. So we've got that record of were all schools represented in this survey, were their voices evolved. Remember, as we make these decisions, we're making them regarding 51,000 students, not just your high schoolers, not just your elementary students. It's literally the entire district when we are making decisions like this. And so basically, here is what the outcomes were. And I predicted this would happen. I mean, I said that when we said we needed to do the survey. And I will be honest with you, to address the student issues, so elevating student voice has been a priority the last 3 years, and we've included them in everything. In this case, parents were the ones saying, my child has to go to work. Parents are saying, I can't get my child to after-school activities, but they're taking the survey for all students because it would have only been high schoolers really taking it. And so honestly, it was it's parent choice and student and staff choice. But as a parent, I was never doing something that was for me. I was doing it based on my child. So if I got a survey, I'm basing it on what is good for my children. And so that's it, because honestly, we have student board forums, we have student advisory, we send surveys to kids all the time, we ask them about Chromebooks, so we would never do something to leave students out of the mix. And we've gotten some great emails from students, and all of the students that have emailed have said not to add the 15 minutes. All the students that have emailed have talked about work and after-school things and have said not to add the 15 minutes. When it comes to, and I'll share this one too, when it comes to adding Saturdays, that was not an option on the survey. So yes, we got the email about Saturdays. That was not an option. The survey was already out to the masses. I do know that people that have been in the district said that Saturdays were used before and were not effective. I was not here at that time. But again, that is another option. A combination of all of it is an option. I mean, we could get to a win-win. So you could do, all of that. I will say that the Saturdays, again, if that were remote instruction and it were synchronous, because remember, one of the things with remote instruction, we no longer are a one-to-one device district because our elementary students are 2-to-1. So any remote we do is not going to be able to be synchronous for our elementary students. It could be for high school, it could be for middle, even though middle schoolers are not taking them home anymore. But you could do synchronous. Some of the districts that are using remote are doing synchronous instruction. Those that have many are still are just asynchronous, which is sending work home that's related to what you're learning, and students are doing work at home. But districts that have a strong remote plan are doing it like when we were in the pandemic, where it is asynchronous, teachers have office hours, it's still that kind of instruction. So here's, in a nutshell, here's all the breakdown between parents, between staff, and your grand totals of the percentages of who said which of those options was going to be the preferred option. It was pretty much balanced across all. So open up for questions.
Board Member Crowley.
A clarification, when you talk about financial implications, would that only be if the retesting occurred?
Yes.
Okay.
Board Member Kuhn. I think you brought up the students, and when I was weighing this out, my initial thought was, yeah, let's go with 15 minutes. Easy peasy. We waste that much time in a day. However, I started listening to our students, not all that were high school, and 15 minutes really does affect their after-school programs. It affects tutoring for some of them. I mean, there's so many things, I think, jobs. And there was a student that really kind of put it into perspective with dollars and cents, with how much we would cause them to lose of their income. And oftentimes that income is helping their families. So I worry about doing the 15 minutes.
Board Member Watts.
I do want to correct some misinformation that's out there concerning the 15-minute day. There are many of us who've served in this district a long time, and we've had extended days before. It's not ideal, but we made it work. So I do want to correct some misinformation that's out there on the use of the 15 minutes, where we were very creative in adding maybe 15 minutes to my social studies block to do an extended piece, then trade off time, like Mr. Daniels said, maybe to the math block. So it has worked before. It's not ideal. But also, another concern that I have about adding 3 days to the end of the calendar would be, how does it impact high school graduations during the day? Because right now we have many high schools, again, on the 21st, 22nd, and 23rd, who've got graduation during the daytime. And we know it takes a whole village to get graduation through, whether it's your school administration, your teachers, your students. And then if we keep these on the calendar, parents will have to take kids out of school because I got an elementary kid who wants to be at my graduation, I got a cousin who wants to be at graduation. So is it really going to make an impact in adding that if we still keep graduation as it is? And I know we are committed to doing that. So I do have some concerns about how we can commit to a graduation. A lot of our smaller schools, they use the entire staff, quote, to pull off a graduation. A lot of our larger schools, they have assigned people, but still impact who stays in the building on the graduation and who stays, quote, in the building for, quote, instruction.
Right.
I also understand that adding 3 days to the end gives you a quality chunk of time back. It also gives you, your testing schedule. So I understand the pros and cons of both. It's a tough decision right now because, unfortunately, we didn't plan ahead for weather days because of our past history. We've had very few snow days previously in this 2 or 3 year cycle, so we're kind of at an awkward spot. Again, survey shows that it's not going to make any. 50% will not be happy which weather we got to do. So we've got to figure out what's the best way, what's the most impactful for student outcomes and student behaviors. And I just want to add that because, again, some of the discussion I've heard has kind of been trying to, quote, shade it. And I just want to make sure that we understand that we've done it both ways before, and it can be done.
I wanted to respond to something about graduation. So in the testing schedules, so for high school testing, it would be the 5 days, the 19th to the 23rd, but one of those days would be a makeup day. What we would do with high schools is we would work individually with them. On the 21st, that day are kind of your smaller schools. And we have early middle college, we have Kennedy, we've got prep, and yeah, Glenn's larger, but they're at night. That wouldn't impact, they're later in the day. What we would do on any of the days, the next day there's larger ones in there throughout the day, and then the Friday as well, is we would work with those schools to figure out when would makeup be versus the actual testing. We would make sure that our seniors, if that is the option that is chosen, we already have thought through this. We would need to make sure that any testing for seniors is finished, and which is a given anyway. But we would make sure like the 19th and 20th, that's happening. So again, it would be intricate work with each school to make sure they still have the staff that can get to the graduation, make sure that who's ever staying back to do any of the retesting for those students that need to do makeup, or not retesting, makeup testing. And again, if you've already done your testing, you don't need to be there on your makeup if you haven't missed testing. You don't need to, I'm not gonna say you don't need to come to school, but you're not testing that day. And so we would have to look at it individually, work with each school individually, that admin team and that leadership team to make it work.
Any other questions? Yes, Board Member Miller.
Yes. I actually was a teacher in the district when we had some extended days. And so when this was brought up, I thought that's probably a pretty cool option. But overwhelmingly, I've had parents and students come up to me and ask for us to keep the original calendar and use the days at the end of the year. And it's been overwhelming, like hundreds of students and parents have come up. So I'm in support of that.
Board Member Watts.
Two more things, I'm sorry. The Saturday school piece, I hear you're saying about Saturday school, but when you're talking the whole district, if you, again, go back and look at our history, when we did have Saturday school, we had less than 50% of our students show up for Saturday school as a school district. Now, when we do offer it Then when we do offer it as a support for exams and EOC tutoring, where I can create my own day, my own time, and bring pizza and things like that, I get a great impact of students in, but that's not district-wide K-12. So again, looking at our history, it does not work to have a mandatory Saturday school. But you can still offer options on Saturday for certain classes to come. We've had Math 1 options to come in before EOC. We've had English 2 options to come in for EOC. And it's worked because those kids say, hey, I want to be here for this. It's not being mandated. They want to be there. So we had great turnout in schools for that kind of thing. My other point I want to make is I'm still concerned about the, quote, the silent majority of students and staff. Because again, I've taken informal polls when I've gone out to schools and visited the last 2 or 3 weeks. And some of the people out here say, just make a decision. Just make a decision. We understand that it's a difficult decision, but just make a decision. And there are folks out there who didn't do the survey who said, you know, I'm okay with 15 minutes. Well, I'm okay with extended 3 days. But I'm just saying, so we got to really be careful of how we take this survey data, because again, those who do the data may be speaking louder than those who are a silent majority.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Mrs. McManus and Lauren Richards, our Chief Operations Officer, will now discuss the 25-26 school year calendar.
Good evening, board members and Superintendent McManus. Following that robust conversation, we approved a 25-26 calendar back in the fall. It was great to be ahead of schedule, but we decided to go ahead and revisit that calendar in light of the inclement weather days we have already had, to try to not be in that same situation again. And so in the 25-26 calendar, we had already increased that to 176 instructional days for students instead of the 174 that we had in this year's calendar. But we are proposing to also increase by 3 days to a total of 179. We have had calendars that are 180 for many, many years. And so this gets us back to 1,074 hours for the school year. Which gives us a very nice cushion for inclement weather days, in addition to also having remote days potentially built into that calendar as well. And so you can see on the slide, in looking at the calendar, it was a very tight calendar to try to keep the 215 required days for staff between August 1st, which is unfortunately a Friday, and the end of May. And so the staff proposal is to add a student day to August 12th, which is a Tuesday, December 19th, which is the Friday right before winter break, still leaving 2 work days for staff at the end of first semester, which is important to our high schools, and then a day at the end of the second semester, end of the school year, May 22nd. And so with that, I will ask Superintendent McManus if she has anything she would like to add, and then turn it over for questions.
Yep. No, this is just an effort to get the days up so that, again, we have more options and we don't need to really be using work days. I mean, if we have more student days, we can leave our work days. And so it just gives us more options for next school year. If in the event of weather, if weather does not occur, we have more kids in school more days, and we've got teachers having their work days, so it all works out.
Any questions? Yes, Board Member Crowley.
My concern is that a lot of people ask for these calendars and get them a year in advance because they have to put in for, I mean, I know like our hospital systems, employees there have to put in a year in advance for their time off. So then to start, if our calendar said before we would start August 13th and now it's August 12th, I mean, that's a day, but people have already made plans. I mean, this is kind of like where we were last year with, now we ended up going significantly earlier. This is a day, but I just think, like, could we add the December 19th and the May 22nd that are essentially almost a year and over a year away, as opposed to one that is, 8 months away, 7 months away at this point?
That is certainly the board's decision if you wish to pass that motion.
I do. Anything else? Thank you very much. So Chris Weichert, our Chief Human Resource Officer, will discuss the proposed revisions to Policy 4116.3, which is staff rights and responsibilities.
Good evening, Chair Kaplan, Vice Chair Bohannon, board members, Superintendent McManus. Stand before you to discuss our proposed changes to our staff rights and responsibilities. Our proposal really goes around the pre-employment screening process. We're proposing to allow superintendent or designee, which is typically my position, the opportunity to authorize with conditions if a person would test positive for cannabis. If they were to be, this would be approved, they would be subject to 4 random drug tests throughout their first year of employment. They'd also have to sign a paper saying they understand our board policy that we are a drug-free environment. Rationale, it goes a lot with what other systems are doing already. Currently, Thomasville City and Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools are the only 2 that have this strict policy. If a person would test positive, they would not be eligible for employment for 6 months. And then they could reapply. All right, if they were selected at that point and they passed the test, all right, they would be employed. So if you think about it, the kind of thought here is, instead of waiting 6 months, we're going to put provisions in they have to agree to, and they're also paying at their expense. It's $55 a test. So we're looking kind of moving to what Charlotte and Lexington City has of drug testing still, with flexibility for non-CDL holders or folks that drive our district vehicles. It's about flexibility and being in alignment. I also want to just point out here, I want to mention, we talked about in policy, many systems across our state do not pre-employ drug testing for all employees. They only do CDL holders. I listed them up here, and I got this information off of either looking at their board policy manuals, AR manuals, or talking to the schools. And 2 of them I, at one time or another, have been employed by, so I kind of have firsthand knowledge there. When we think about this, though, we have a lot of CBD products that say they don't have any THCs, but it's not regulated, and they could, for lack of a better word, pop positive. Also, some of our surrounding states, recreational marijuana use is legal. So they do that over here before their employment is legal. It's not legal in North Carolina. It's not our spot to say, we're not saying that we agree with that decision-making. What we are saying is once they become employed, all right, that we're going to give them opportunity to live up to our standards. So just to be real clear, this is not lowering expectations for a drug-free work environment. Any employee who comes in and exhibits any characteristic, slurred speech, pen dies, odd erratic behavior, all right, is subject to our reasonable suspicion protocol, where we have a staff member take the person to the drug lab and they're tested, and then we follow the process. In this situation, if a person who tested positive for pre-employment and they would agree for 4 random drug tests and signing they understand our policy, if they test positive again, even if they're not exhibiting these symptoms at work, they make a poor decision. They go up to Danville, go across, enjoy the new casino, make a poor decision. All right, they come back, it's their time. Their employment will be ended because they've had their warning. You can see here, I gave you the statistics for our pre-employment positive tests for cannabis over the past 4 calendar years. Currently as 2025, and we do it by calendar year because that's how we get it from the drug lab. They don't understand school years like we do. So yes, you will notice there's a lot of drug testing there because we've hired a lot of different folks. This also includes your coaches, your temporary folks, and permanent full-time. Only ones that this policy change would not apply to are your CDL holders or folks who drive our vehicles. I welcome feedback and questions at this time.
I've got one.
Yes, Board
Chris,
Member Barr.
can you go back to that slide? Now, pre-employment positive test, to make sure I got this correct. Let's say 2024 calendar year, we gave 1,511 tests and 43 came back positive for THC. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
These are pre-employment tests. They don't include the other tests that we do for, CDL during the year and stuff.
Yes, Vice Chair Bohannon?
So do we do the standard 5-panel test? Is it
Yes,
5
sir.
or 10? Do we do 5? So Well,
I am fairly certain it's 5, but I'll get back to you and confirm that. I get the report. Honestly, I always look for positive and negatives. I can't honestly say I've ever counted them.
okay. I guess the reason I'm asking is because on the standard 5-panel
Yeah.
test, that tests for amphetamines, opiates, marijuana, PCP, and then I believe cocaine.
Correct.
And out of those 5, marijuana is the only one where you can test for it and test positive, and the positive result may, based on kind of the current environment, not necessarily mean that you participated in illegal behavior because of what you put in the PowerPoint of the prevalence of the hemp-based products, which in this state, possession of marijuana is still very much illegal, but possession of hemp is not and is very much unregulated. And I think that that's sort of where the issue is.
But you could test positive for opiates and not take opiates.
But but I think to that point though, if you test positive for something that you have a prescription for, we have a process already where if you test positive for something and you're actually supposed to be taking it, you can provide the right whatever.
Right.
And
So I can address that part there. If it's someone would test positive for something that might be a prescription, anyone who tests positive, the prospective employee is contacted before they contact us. HR, we always know something happened if we don't get the results back the next day. It's kind of the telltale sign. They notify the prospective employee or the person that took the test. They're given an opportunity to provide that information, such as a prescription, and then before they give us their results. If they would have valid, it'd come back positive, and they have a little asterisk that explains why.
Okay, I have a question or
Yes.
comment. Help me understand the process, and maybe our legal counsel can help me out. In our last policy committee, we discussed this. We voted to post it, is that correct? To post the change, I think that the committee recommended. And then I thought that we would have another policy committee to hear public comments. What did the community say? We haven't done that. Did we skip a step or what?
No, sir, we did not skip a step. Once it's posted for public comment, it's posted for 7 days. We did not receive any public comments on this particular policy, and then it usually comes back to the next full board, and you have an opportunity to discuss it as a full board as well. That's the typical process for policy.
Okay, that was my concern, that we haven't heard any public comments. Okay.
So we're using your analysis for the drug test?
Yes, ma'am.
So in looking it up, it says if you are an occasional user, it's detectable for 1 to 3 days. If you are a moderate user, it's 5 to 7. Heavy user, 10 to 21 days, and chronic, 30-plus days. So if you're saying, say somebody's going over and they're an occasional or moderate, they could, is it possible to, if you're saying 4 tests, could they do another one, say, a week later? And then if it is negative within those 4 tests, is that it?
Yeah, once we go, the way we would foresee it, all right, is we'd set them up for probably another test in the first, 15 to 45 days. It's random. So we literally, in my last system, I had a random generator that would pick their dates for me, similar to what we do for our CDL drivers. And then we kind of go from there. We kind of space them out, and we do different days of the week. Typically, my favorite days to do it, because transportation always ends up the latter of the week, would be to do it early in the week, just for exactly what you're speaking about on the weekend usage. So it's random. I can't say exactly when it would be, because then it wouldn't be random.
I get that, but I'm just saying, could it be an earlier test? I mean, because if it's going to be positive at all, then that's it, right?
So, yes, ma'am. Correct. So if I think I hear you correctly, you're asking us, can you please do it in the first 14 days, so that if it's more than moderate, it would pop positive, and the employment would be ended. And when we tell them that, they will know. Is that correct?
Right, or even earlier than 14.
Yeah.
If it's moderate, it's 5 to 7 days.
All right. Sure, we can do that.
Okay, thank you.
You got a question?
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Board
so
Member Watts.
Yes, Board Member
based
Watts.
on that discussion that was just had, can you said we can do that.
Mhm.
Is there a way to change the language to say that we will do it?
Yes. Sure, we can put it, we can either put it in the policy or we can put it in the AR if you like. We also have an AR, I'm looking to Dion to make sure, there is an AR with the company with this. Yes, we can change the policy to adjust it, if that's the request of the board.
So I would just say that I would prefer, I know we're talking about this publicly, but I think from a kind of employer standpoint, I think it's important for us to have the flexibility where we're not saying definitively that the first test will be a specific number of days after employment, because I think it's good for it to still be random. So like we can indicate that what our preference is, and it could be, because I also don't want, if we're trying to make the new process work the way it should be, which is to make sure that people, it actually is random, I would rather have the flexibility of Chris being able to do it 5 days after, or 9 days after, or whatever, like where it's not consistent, so that it can, I think it serves its purpose a little bit better that way, at least based on my experience.
Are we talking about they fail a drug test, we hire them, and then we do a random test? Or are we saying they fail a drug test, we don't hire them, but they can come back in a week? And then if they test negative for the 5 different things they're being tested for, then they could be hired.
As opposed to the 6 months.
Right. Like, instead of having to wait 6 months, if you fail a drug test and you realize, oh, shoot, that stuff I was taking, I guess, had this in it, you have a week to not take that stuff and then get tested again and see if you have a clear drug test.
I think the problem with that is that every single person metabolizes whatever they put into their body differently. So Google may have said that that's what it is, but is it? Is that really what it is? Like, and having it so that it is at the discretion to be random, it could be day 1 or it could be day 14, but to say you fix the issue for a one-time user or something, it may not be in a week that they could do it, because their body metabolizes everything differently. I think that's something we have to consider, is you can't say, okay, you failed it this week, next week we're gonna try again. Is that what you were kind of?
Well, that or do away with the 6-month wait. They can come back in a month and do it. But I'm not for somebody failing a drug test and then us hiring them anyway. And then doing I don't know. I don't like the double standard for employees that are entrusted with, driving our vehicles or driving students on buses being different from those who are caring for our children in a classroom.
So how is that? And I hear you. I hear where you're coming from. But if we're looking at the state, and can we go back to the screen that has all the counties that you talked to? Those are all the large counties, even a lot of the very small counties around us. And they're following the same proposed change. And it doesn't seem to be, from my perspective, an issue, because the state sets the CDL and transportation laws. No school board or district effectively can mess with transportation laws. So I don't think it's a double standard. It's just 2 different standards, not double.
And I guess what I would say is that we actually, so number one, the difference to me, no pre-employment drug testing, even in my opinion, that's interesting. Like that's a decision, right? I don't know if I was surprised to see this many counties who aren't doing any pre-employment drug screening at all. What I would say though is that, number one, we're trying to just address the variance, I think, that exists with kind of what the positive test for the THC means, given just the uneven kind of addressing of like the hemp versus the actual marijuana. But I also think though that the language in the policy that's proposed says, this is like your first slide, it might be, Chris, where I think it says may author, it does. So it says the Chief Human Resource Officer or designee may authorize employment. So I imagine that, if a person, I don't know how honest people would be, but if a person does test positive and you have a conversation and you say, you tested positive for THC on your drug screening, can you talk to me about that? And they say, well, honestly, I don't know what happened. You might, in my opinion, in those instances, you have to kind of exercise judgment and be able to say, okay, all right, you probably aren't being forthright about what's going on, and then you may choose to not offer employment. So I think that there are additional kind of fail-safes baked into the policy proposal that I think will balances this out, in my opinion.
Board Member Miller?
Yes. What I'm struggling with on this is anybody that applies in our district, this is public knowledge. They know they're going to be tested. Why, I just don't understand this whole conversation, to be honest with you. It's like trying to play a game. They know the drug is illegal, at least in this state, and they know they're going to be tested. So why would they come in all drugged up?
Well, I think, let me add some clarification of it. It's not necessarily the drug itself, it's other CBD products which are not federally regulated that may be causing the positive test. It's not, quote, the marijuana, it's the other things that they may be taking that they may not know that's over the counter. These are things that are over the counter that you can take for pain, for whatever that may have it in there, and they just do not have, they do not know. So that's something I would think about that part of it as well, for clarification.
But you know what, I don't think that's, if we're being honest, I don't think that's the intent of this policy. To me, I think the intent of that policy is to lower our standard for those who are using marijuana, That's my thought. And I want to ask another question to our legal counsel. Let's say if we do pass this policy, and as soon as we pass it, we know that a teacher is hired and he or she tests positive for THC. Something untoward happens to a student in that teacher's classroom involving that teacher. Have we explored the legal ramifications of that?
So what I would say is that it's not an automatic thing. It really depends on the circumstances. I think that if you hire someone one day, and they test positive, the very next day they have some kind of an incident, they're under the influence or something like that. Obviously, there's some grave concerns there. But what I would say is that that could happen on any given day in any classroom, where a teacher or a staff member could potentially be under the influence for something, and they could have not tested negative when they were hired. And so that's why we have our drug-free workplace policy. That's why we have our reasonable suspicion drug procedures, even for alcohol or any other substance. If there's a teacher that's behaving erratically, we have procedures in place so that we can immediately remove them from the classroom, send them for a drug test, and take appropriate steps depending on the outcome of that. But I would say that the liability question is not an automatic. It really depends on the circumstances, what happened, the conduct of that particular staff member, and is there some sort of causal connection there.
Yes, Board Member.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got a couple of 3 questions, Dr. Wackett, if you would.
Yes, sir.
So if the person fails under the current policy, if the candidate or the applicant fails the drug test, they have to wait 6 months.
Yes, sir.
All right. So secondly, what this policy does, if they fail the first test, the initial test, they can be hired.
Yes, sir.
With the provision for, if they fail the second test,
Their employment is ended.
their employment is terminated. Okay. Can we go back to that screen where it post the change in policy itself.
yeah.
There we go.
Sure.
Third question. The superintendent, it says that the superintendent, the chief human resource officer, who I'm talking to now, or his or her designee. So why do we have three different
Sure.
individuals designated there, or maybe more?
So we put that language in there because, the district has not always had a chief human resource officer. At one point, it was an HR director. It's just kind of allowing it, this policy hasn't been updated since 2013. It's not one that we update on a regular. So any of these, it would be my signature or the superintendent's signature. But if you didn't have a chief human resource officer and you went back to an assistant superintendent structure, you might have an assistant superintendent of HR.
Follow-up question. Sure. Why couldn't we just say the superintendent and leave out the chief human resource officer or designee?
We could very well do that. Yeah, it's.
The other question is, somebody else may have already asked this question, that is, may authorize?
Yes.
If this passes, which I hope it doesn't, but I'm voting against it, but I would feel better if it does pass, if it said they shall designate may authorize employment on the condition for random drug tests.
Can I clarify that, sir?
Yes.
So if I heard you correctly, you said you'd prefer to say the superintendent or designee shall authorize. That means we would have to authorize, where if we say may, it gives options so we can look at, for example, the level of testing, the information they provide. There's variable factors. Did I understand that correctly?
Board member.
I'm sorry, a couple more questions. So this is designed as a teacher recruitment concept?
I think a teacher recruitment would not be the term I would use. I know social media and the paper may have used that. It's funny when you use one example and how it gets ran with. I think it just gives us more opportunities to hire the most qualified staff. In some states, it's legal. Some others, it's not. Some people make choices. It just gives us an opportunity to see the whole applicant and consider all factors. Because that 6-month time is long.
Yeah. Here's the reason for my question. How many bus drivers do we have in the district?
I'm sorry?
How many bus drivers do we have in the district?
Well, including substitutes, we have approximately 300.
300, and there are about a little over 7,000 employees in the district.
Yes, sir.
So this opens up the option, this kind of option opens it up for almost 7,000 employees.
Correct.
Is that the intention of this change in policy?
I'll make sure I understand this correctly. So you're asking if it's the intent of the policy to allow us to potentially hire other people for other positions? Yes. I think if I understood your question correctly. So it just gives us more flexibility, because currently, right now, if someone tests positive for cannabis, they're going to sit out 6 months, all right, before they can hire. And typically, they're going to go work somewhere else.
Board Member Watts, did you have something?
Yes, this is to Brother Board Member Wood. I hear what you're saying about the superintendent only, but I really feel strongly that that's why we have an HR department to handle these issues, not just this particular policy change, but other issues that are related to that. And I would not want any superintendent to have this sole authority to be placed on him or her to make this decision.
Well, just one response to that, Board Member Watts. This is a significant policy. Would you agree that this is a significant policy change?
No, sir.
Oh, you would not? Okay. Well, it's my view that it is a fairly significant policy change. And therefore, rather than having the potential for three different employees, to make the decision, it would place it in the hands of one. It wouldn't have to be the superintendent. It could be the chief human resource officer or someone that's designated, but there would be one person in charge rather than 1, 2, 3, or 4 or more.
Point of order, or I may have said the wrong point, whatever. All of our policies talk about the superintendent or designee, every single policy that we have. Because in the event that our superintendent is not available, there is someone who has the authority, such as our chief human resource officer, or our financial, or our chief academic, or deputy superintendent, whatever it may be, so that there is someone who can make a decision if, God forbid, something happened and our superintendent was not available. We can't, that would effectively change every policy to have it resting solely on her. And that is not how we have set the district up.
Well, I'm not sure. Let me respond to that briefly, if I might. I'm not sure that would change every policy. All it would change is this particular policy. I mean, I might ask our legal counsel to clarify.
No, it would only change this particular policy. You would have to take action to change all the others.
Right, but it would effectively, it would set a precedent for all of our other policies. All of our other policies saying that a designee could handle it, but we want everything for this policy to just be in the hands of the superintendent.
Well, I mean, that's up to the board. I mean, it's your policy, and so if you wanted it to only be in the decision to be made by one person just for this one particular instance, that's your, that's the prerogative of the board. If you wanted to allow flexibility for other situations and other policies, that's perfectly fine as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Yes, yes. So back to this one more time. So we're not sending the message that we are okay with hiring somebody that tests positive. We are saying that there could be some creams or there could be something. And so for that reason, we're going to do another, hopefully quicker, sooner than later, test. And if that is positive, then that's it for 6 months.
That's correct.
That's what you're saying.
And let me say this once again. I
Yes.
think we're not being honest and truthful. I don't think it's about a cream. I don't think it's about some type of medication someone uses that may have CBD that connects to THC. To me, it appears that we are lowering our standards, and we're lowering our standards it just seems like that we're lowering our standards.
I'm going to respectfully disagree with that because our standards are our standards. And we could have someone in our classrooms right now who passed the pre-employment drug screen and decided to go have a big time and do something crazy, and they could be tested tomorrow and they could be positive. And you're essentially saying because they already made it past the drug screen, then somehow it's a different classification. Whereas if we had someone walk into a school that smelled of something or acted erratically, I think somebody's already said this, we're immediately going to do what is needed to take care of the situation. It's happened in the past. But to say that this is effectively lowering the standard would completely take out of the equation that we have people doing things currently and we don't have the ability to police them.
Vice Chair Bohannon.
So, Chris, do you get the actual results or do you get just whether it's positive or negative?
We get the results with the.
So if the standard is 50 nanograms per milliliter, which that's the standard across the country, you can see if it's higher than that or lower than that.
Yes.
So, because I think the other thing too about the flexibility that the current or the proposed iteration of the policy provides you is, again, the ability to look at the results and then make an assessment based off of, like, if it's 100, then you can look at it and go, you weren't, this is not just a mistake. This is not just you kind of mixing up the, whatever you most likely were actually like consuming THC. So I think that, again, there are, I think that you and the rest of your staff who helped put this iteration together have been really intentional. We still won't be aligned with the majority of the other large districts in the state, but I think that, to me, this is a good balance.
And this will be my last comment on this.
Okay.
I
Board
think,
Member Barr.
I still say we may have a big disagreement here, that it just feels like we are, we're lowering our standards. I never thought, because I taught in this school system, I went through, I think, K through 12. My wife taught in the school system. I have other people, there's part of family members that taught, that we would ever be here saying that, to me, that we want to lower the standard. And if we have a teacher that we want to hire, he or she tests positive for THC, we're saying that it is okay to go ahead and hire that person. When that person, could do their back, could kind of get all that stuff out of their system, come in clean, say, hey, you know what, I want a job, so this is what I need to do. And maybe that's the traditional way that I've learned, that if you want a position, that if you want, if you want a position, if you want an assignment or whatever, you've got to make sure that you do the prep work in order to get that position. And to me, it looks like we're trying to follow the trend that is occurring in the nation concerning marijuana. And I think if we're not careful, that it's going to affect us in a negative way. I'm dealing with a couple of young adults who innocently thought that THC was okay in high school, 9th grade, 10th grade particularly, and now these individuals are addicted to marijuana, and it's almost like it's a gateway drug. It's opened up the door to other issues, not only to harder drugs, but also some major mental health issues. And we may all decide that we're going to agree to disagree, but I just have to voice that. To me, this bothers my conscience. So,
Madam Chair, may I just?
Yes.
Just want to say something.
Absolutely.
There's lots of questions, and there's been some requests for a little bit more about the procedure, or whatever the case may be. I just want to remind the board, you do have the ability to refer something back to a committee if you think that further additional conversation or questions or anything like that's needed. So
Okay.
I did just want to remind the board of that.
Thank you.
that sounds like a win-win.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
one more.
Yes.
One more
yes, yes,
question,
yes.
one more
Board Member Barr. I
comment.
would.
Yeah, we kind of favor each other. One person has already stated tonight that said the school bus is a moving classroom. And I agree with that. I think we fail to recognize that a lot of times as stakeholders. And we just finished resolving a major bus driver dispute. So I've got one more question, Dr. Weicker, and that is, what kind of response have you had so far, or has the district had from bus drivers now that they know, or since they know, or they may know, if we don't know yet, what kind of response have you gotten from bus drivers who may have heard about this proposed change in policy?
I have not heard any feedback from them.
Okay. My suspicion is that, to use an old Brit phrase, that this may very well put the cat among the pigeons, to use an old Brit phrase, to have a policy that applies to the moving classroom, but does not apply to the stationary classroom. So I encourage the board to vote against this policy.
Any other comments? Okay, well, we're going to move to action items
Thank you.
now.
Thank you, Chris.
So first, We're going to consider the approval to name the softball scoreboard at Glenn High School after the Barbara Stanley volcano.
Move to approve.
Second.
So I have a motion by Board Member Crowley, a second by Board Member Brown Gaither. Any discussion?
Yes, Chair Kaplan, if I
Yes.
may. I'd like to thank Marty Stanley for coming tonight to speak on behalf of his sister. And please forward our thanks and gratitude to your sister for this investment that she's made in our public schools. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. So we've had a motion, we've had a second, we've had some discussion. Any other comments? All in favor? Thank you. That passes unanimously. Next, consider approval of a plan to make up the instructional hours for the 24-25 school year. Do I have a motion for the plan?
I'd like to motion that we approve keeping the calendar with the days to make up at the end of the school year, and then and not the 15 minutes, sorry, the other one's on the other
I
calendar.
second.
Yeah. I second it.
Okay, so we have a motion by Board Member Kuhn. We have a second by Board Member Brown Gaither and Board Member Crowley. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes 8-1. Next, consider approval of the amended standard and early middle college academic calendar for the 2025-2026 school year. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
So I have a motion by Board Member Kuhn, a second by Board Member Watts. Any discussion? Yes.
I just want to make sure I understand about the amended part. That's where we're adding the 3 days to the 12th of August. Am I right? That's the amendment part. August 12th, December 19th, and May 22nd. Is that the amended portion? I just want to make sure. Okay, thank you.
So can I make an amendment that we take off the August 12th date, but keep the other two dates?
So is it a substitute
So somebody,
Is that
yeah,
substitute motion?
substitute
Do we
motion.
need to vote it down or up before we do another motion?
Is there a
I'll
second?
second.
Okay. Okay. So Board Member Crowley, would you repeat the substitute motion?
So consider approval of the amended standard and early middle college academic calendar for the 2025-26 school year minus August 12th.
Okay. So we have that substitute motion and we have a second. Any other discussion? All in favor? Opposed? So motion passes 7-2, excuse me. Next, consider approval of the proposed changes to policy 6145, school-sponsored extra class activities briefed at the January 14th, 2025 Policy Committee meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
So I have a motion by Board Member Kuhn, a second by Board Member Watts.
Chair, is it possible for me to make a substitute motion to table this?
This is not the
This
drug.
is-
Oh, I'm sorry, I jumped to the drugs.
It's not
I went
that.
to the drugs. No, it's on my mind.
Do we have any discussion on the sponsored extra class activities?
And this is the one that just aligns us with the state requirements, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, that's right. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. So next, consider approval of the proposed changes to policy 4116.3, staff rights and responsibilities, drug-free workplace policy briefed at the November 12th, 2024, and January 14th, 2025 policy committee meetings.
Can I make a substitute motion? Well, I would like to make a substitute motion that we table this.
Until the next,
Yes, until the next. Like to probably ask some more questions and just kind of think
until the
on it.
next committee meeting or the next board meeting?
Next board meeting.
Till the next board meeting in
Yes,
2 weeks?
correct.
Okay,
I would like it to go before committee.
Second.
We're going to do that.
so we have a second.
I have some discussion. I'm not opposed to that. I just think if we're going to bring it back through for that much further discussion, should we go back to committee before bringing it out here?
You're okay with that?
I guess the discussion I would have is what other discussion does there need to be at this point?
I don't.
Like, I feel like, I'll just say, like, people, either you're gonna vote for it or you're not. I feel like we had a policy committee meeting, it was tabled, then we had another policy committee meeting, now it's on full board. I think we should just vote it up or down at this point.
I was just trying to be
Well,
amenable.
we do have a substitute motion to table it to the next policy committee, and we have a second for that. Board Member Miller? Okay. All right, so for the substitute motion, all in favor of that? Opposed? So motion fails. Okay. All right. Voted down. So we will go back to the original. Consider approval of the proposed changes to the policy 4116.3 staff rights and responsibilities drug-free workplace policy briefed at the November 12th, 2024 and January 14th policy committee meetings. Do I have a motion?
Unreadiness,
Excuse me?
unreadiness.
Unreadiness.
My vote tonight is going to be no, but it's not because of the information that was led by some people here tonight with misinformation. That's my unreadiness.
So do we have a motion?
So moved.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
So I have a motion by Board Member Kuhn. We have a second by Board Member Crowley. Any further discussion? Okay. So all in favor to consider the proposed changes?
I don't really.
Wait a minute. We're a little confused here. Okay, let's see. So we have a motion and we have a second to consider the approval of the proposed changes to the drug policy. What has been brought to us? And okay. So we have a motion and we have a second. All in favor of the proposed policy? The change. The changed policy. All in favor of the, okay.
The changes to the original policy, the policy as it was stated tonight by
Right.
Dr. Weicker.
That we will now change it. Okay. So all in favor?
Okay, clearly we've got issues. So maybe we do need to.
I think,
We're
You gotta keep the vote going.
So,
okay.
I
Okay,
saw one hand
opposed?
raised for in favor of the
Okay.
changes.
Opposed?
Opposed? So
Okay. It failed.
motion fails.
I'm leaving now.
So consider approval of the proposed changes to policy 5127.7, 5127.1 early graduation briefed at the January 14th policy committee meeting.
Move to approve.
Second.
So I have a motion by Board Member Crowley, a second by Board Member Watts. All in favor? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. So next, we will have the superintendent's update.
I actually forgot for a second that I was doing an update after all that. I'm sorry. I've what update? No, I do have an update. I have 3 slides very quickly that I will address around the recent topic. Kevin, go ahead and turn. Around the directives on immigration and custom enforcement. I wanted to address it with the board now as we have shared guidance with our principals around this. We've shared, we have a message. If it didn't go out already, it's going out this evening or first thing in the morning, one to staff and one to families. But basically, what the enforcement is saying is that we now allow the enforcement to happen in and around schools where these were previously protected areas in relation to immigration. All right. So here is basically our message that is very important, that under federal law, all of our children are entitled to a free public school education regardless of their citizenship status. We do not require citizenship status from parents. That is not part of enrollment process, so we don't have any information that would include that information. We will follow state and federal privacy laws that protect student educational records and any personally identifiable information. So we are subject to following all laws that would protect student information, and we will continue to work to ensure that our families feel safe and welcome in every school in our school district. Here is also information that is very important. Principals did receive legal guidance last week. And we will also, in addition to everything I just said, we also will comply with any lawful subpoenas or court orders presented by a law enforcement agency. Schools will seek assistance. So if someone does show up to one of our campuses, schools, again, there has to be an official subpoena by a judge, and schools are directed to call our legal team as well to double check and to verify. And so that is part of the process. FAQ is going out for staff this week, and we're also going to be meeting with our community partners very soon, and that includes our Latino Congress and our Hispanic League and our church leaders, faith-based leaders, other community partners, to make sure that we are all working together to ensure that our families do feel safe. That's very important for us as a system. So I'm going to open up if you all have any questions about any of those statements. Yes.
One question, yes. Have we had any occurrences of an ICE agent on any campus?
No,
Okay.
we have not.
Thank you. Our next order of business is the consent agenda. Consider approval of the general personnel report. Do I have a motion? So I have a motion by Board Member Barr, a second by Board Member Kuhn. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. Tuesday, February 11th, 2025 will be our next regular meeting of the Board of Education. Thank you to Cable 2 viewers for watching, and this will conclude our broadcast.
Thank you for joining us on your school channel, Cable 2.